But because we literally had to save every single dollar, and our savings, I still remember our actual savings account, we're putting $2 in a week. That's all we could afford to save. But we knew we had to save. But it created really good habits for us.
That's awesome.
When the income increased, the savings increased. And you have to sacrifice. If you're not willing to sacrifice, you're going to pay for it down the track.
You're listening to Property Investor Tales, stories from the front yard. Here's your host, Tabitha Bright.
Hello and welcome to Property Investor Tales, stories from the front yard, where I get to speak to property investors from around Australia about their investing journey. My name's Tabitha Bright and I'm the head of coaching here at Positive Real Estate, where we help people build wealth through property. With over 8,000 clients across Australia and New Zealand, there are some incredible stories to tell, which hopefully make your investing journey that little bit easier and will inspire you along the way. So my guest today is one of our newer coaching team, Adam Salmon, and we discuss how Adam dealt with unexpected parenthood and then what it resulted in to him getting creative to change his family's prospects and getting into the property market with his first joint venture. And lastly, his biggest lesson around trading and flipping property as a builder developer. So enjoy this conversation with Adam. Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast. So today I have with me Adam Salmon. Adam is our newest member to join the coaching team, and he comes from a background of construction and building. So he's bringing a wealth of knowledge in that space to really fill out the team's expertise, which is super exciting. So I thought, as a bit of an intro to Adam, I would interview him for today's podcast. He's obviously new to the team, and I've been able to provide a bit of leverage under the guise of, oh, everyone does it, Adam, so don't stress. So Adam's had his arm twisted to feature today in my latest victim for the podcast. So Adam, awesome to have you. Thanks so much for being here.
No worries, Tab. Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. And Adam, you were originally a Victorian lad and now you're up in Newcastle calling yourself a Novocastrian, is that correct?
No, I'm still a Victorian, Tab. I live in Newcastle. I really enjoy Newcastle, but I'm still a Victorian.
That's like me. I live and love Australia, but I will always forever be a Kiwi. It's funny, isn't it, how we have our identity attached to.
Yeah. I still call myself a country boy. I'm actually from country Victoria, right down the bottom near Wilson's Promontory, a place called Leongatha.
Oh, Leongatha is beautiful. We used to have a beach house down Venus Bay Way.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, it was beautiful. I liked it because it was raw. It hadn't been sort of overly baked by people looking for a place on the coast. It was, still what we call metal roads in New Zealand, but gravel roads.
Yes.
Yeah. And
I think it's changed a bit now.
Oh, has it? Yeah.
Yep. The last 10 years, it's really kicked on. Still beautiful.
I should have kept it a bit longer.
Oh, yeah.
Might have seen that growth in the end. Alrighty, so just want to talk a little bit about some of the stuff you've done with your investing. You've been very successful with your investing over the years. It's afforded you some choices. One of the choices was to come and essentially start a new career coaching in investing. So take me back a number of years. What put you on the journey of investing in property? Because you had a bit of a shock at a young age. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, a little bit of a shock. I was living the life of a typical early 20s young man who lived with his good mates, partied, played footy, just enjoying life. Never really thought much about the future or thought much past the next pay packet, really. But and then my then girlfriend, now wife, rang me when I was driving home from footy training one night. I had the big brick phone, and she rang me, and all I got before it dropped out was, "I'm effing pregnant." then it dropped out, and then it wasn't for about another hour later I could actually find a phone booth to call her. And okay, yeah, it was literally the phone booth outside a petrol station. I was in country Victoria, and I literally got to a point right then and there and went, well, yeah, I've got a child coming. I better pull my socks up and do something about it. So I suppose it sort of started there, but the actual property didn't start for a few years after that. After we sort of, Pen and I worked our butt off 6-7 days a week. I was working days, she was working nights as a nurse, and saved enough money to then start the journey.
Because Penny was about to head off overseas, wasn't she? She was about to do her big OE, and so that obviously must have been a massive crossroads for you guys, and not an uncommon one for many couples when you find yourself suddenly with the prospect of family, and so you guys then obviously had to make some pretty swift lifestyle changes. So I'm just being nosy now because I've got you on the spot in the hot seat.
That's okay.
And so you weren't living together at that point, so you had to obviously move in and sort all of that stuff out. So it's a massive change in your early 20s.
Oh, absolutely. And so I was batching with a good mate and living like a real good life as a young batcher, and Pen was living with her sister, and as you said, she was, I think it was the doctor's one door, then she was going to the travel agent the next door, but she came out of the doctor's and went, okay, well, won't need to go to the travel agent anymore. So, and then we find ourselves living in a shitty little 2-bedroom apartment with a little baby girl, Molly, and it was head down, bum up really from there. We sort of thought, well, if we're going to make this work, we've got to work hard, we've got to save our money. And we really learnt how to save money. We've never had a credit card ever, and we just if we couldn't afford it, we didn't buy it. We went down to the local op shop and bought a washing machine, the double tub washing machine. We had to wash here, you had to put another one to spin, and it was really quite tough, but it taught us some damn good lessons.
Yeah, I bet. And so how old's Molly now?
23.
23. Okay. All righty. And you went
engaged.
on obviously. Hey?
And engaged.
Oh, and engaged. Oh, that's lovely. Oh, look at your smile. That's fantastic.
Yeah,
and you like the fella, don't you? I can tell from your smile.
Apart from he's a Kiwi, he's a lovely kid.
Very cool. All right. So then I guess tell me about, you saved your money, and did you buy your own home? Did you buy an investment? What did you do with your deposit? Because that was hard come by.
It was hard to come by. Look, the first one we did, I probably couldn't get enough deposit and have a good enough income to be able to get a deposit that I needed to do what I wanted to do, which was do a development. And at that time, it was in Glen Waverley area. The dual locks really hadn't kicked off at that stage there. And I did the sums on it. I did my own feasibility studies on a number of properties and worked out this actually stacks up really quite well. But I then worked out I'm not going to be able to fund that myself. So I found, I knew a old family friend who was a businessman who I approached and put a proposal forward to him. And he said, yep, I'm happy to go with you. However, what wasn't until about 15 or 20 of these proposals, feasibility studies I put in front of him. And then he went, yep, that's a good one. Let's have a look at that one there. So he and I went through the whole process, bought it at auction. I think it was $350,000, which was a lot of money. But you look back now, that property is probably, as it was, probably worth $1.5 million for the land. And then, then I trained as an architectural draftsman. So I did the design documentation, did the DA.
Okay, so you got that behind you as well.
Yeah, I studied that when I first left high school.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Then from there, I did the carpentry works because I'm a carpenter.
Yeah.
And did the build works for the whole thing. Did it as an owner builder because I didn't have my builder's license at that time.
Yeah.
And got to the end of it, sold it, and split the profits, and that gave me a good little sort of nest egg to be able to then go out by myself and do my own thing. It was good.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. And when you say dual lock, because sometimes there's language that people use and it can mean different things to different people. So I'm guessing what you mean by that is 2 on a block or something.
That's correct.
What you mean?
It was one behind the other, which you also refer to as a battle axe type of block.
Yep, great. Okay, fantastic. So the battle axe subdivision. Sometimes when we're talking about dual lock, we use it in terms of apartments where there's a door that you can, you might have 2 apartments side by side and you make it dual lock. Yeah.
Understand.
So just so we're clear for anyone listening to today's podcast. So, so the old battle axe subdivision, yes, it certainly gained popularity, but it's funny because there are certain strategies that take people a while to click onto. They are first often taken up by people with insider knowledge, like builders, like people that have done development before. Strata titling blocks of units is another one of those strategies that was very popular probably 10, 15, 20 years ago, but then the opportunity went out of the market when everybody kind of jumped on the bandwagon, so to speak. And certainly like to get a subdivision to stack up in Glen Waverley today is pretty tricky, right? Because everyone's paying for the profit before they've even done the work. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think if you were to buy now a parcel of land that's got a house in it, and to hold that parcel of land to get the appreciation of the land, then you develop. That's probably the only really way it could work.
Yeah.
Buying, developing and selling just doesn't stack up.
No, not. It's interesting, isn't it? Not anymore. Alrighty. So that was your first sort of foray into investing. And how did that go? It obviously, well, I don't want to say it obviously went well, but I'm assuming it went well. Yeah.
There was a bit of a bumpy ride. It definitely didn't go smooth. It was really definitely my first larger build to scale.
Yeah.
The first.
You built it?
Yeah, I would, because the other guy, Frank, he owned the property himself. He had to be the owner builder. I was the builder essentially. I managed it and did the carpentry works.
Yep. And you said it was a bit bumpy. Tell me about that. We like bumps. We would like to hear about bumps. We don't like to experience them.
I think more bumpy given lack of experience, lack of knowledge about what to do next. You look at the DA process and I've got a design here, I've got plans here, submit those to the council. Oh, actually, I need to get engineers to do the sewerage report and design, and I need to get a survey to do this and this and this, and it was sort of to them and back to me, So the DA took probably about 3 months longer, 4 months longer by memory than what it probably could have taken, purely because of my inexperience. But we had the flexibility, a bit of time up our sleeves, so it wasn't too bad. It was a damn good lesson though.
Yeah, because for people that haven't developed before, like if you don't have that flexibility in regards to buffers or, more cash into the deal so that your holding costs aren't too great. Yeah. When something can take, 4 months, 6 months, 12 months longer than you anticipate, your holding costs start chewing into your profit margin. And it's really easy for these small developments to go sideways pretty fast from chewing up a profit perspective if it's not managed well. So obviously there was a steep learning curve and you had the stability of a finance partner that gave you that little bit of flexibility and had a bit of faith in you, which is lovely.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And
Yeah.
yeah, I quite often speak of Frank, who gave me that opportunity in glowing terms. He's a lovely man, and he took a punt on me, absolutely. But he had good faith in me, and it worked out. And we actually went on after that and did down the track. We did 3 larger developments together, or single resident larger developments together as well.
Oh, that's awesome. It's nice to hear of development going well, because a lot of people want to get into development, and I normally would not recommend it as a first step for many people. I mean, unless, I always say a caveat around that, unless you have specific skills, like you had the skills that you were a draftsperson, you were also a builder by trade. So you had a lot of the skills and understanding that a novice investor may not have. And even so, it was a journey and a process that you had to learn, through the school of hard knocks a bit. Yeah. And when you're learning with somebody else's money too, like if that had gone sideways for you, then there is the added pressure of learning with somebody else's money, which is a freaking tough conversation.
Absolutely. I was fortunate that in my carpentry training, I'd done 12 months estimating and project administration with a company that I was doing an apprenticeship with. So I was able to bring that, I suppose, security for Frank, that here's all the figures, they're all firm, here's all the contracts, everything's contracted. So I had a good understanding of what to do. I'd done it for other people, bits and pieces for other people, but to do it all as one was probably the biggest challenge. But I don't know how people who are untrained and uneducated in this take these sort of things on. It's you need.
Well, it's often a disaster.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think, I say to anyone that's wanting to develop, I always ask them why. What are they wanting to get out of it? What is their skill set, and what cash have they got? Because, you do need decent buffers. You need at least a 20% contingency is the rule that I usually have for clients. And so what happened next then? So you did the deal with Frank. It worked out well. So both of you walked away. You on-sold those developments?
Yep. That was the deal at the start. Salmon straight away. Sold them for a record price at the time for $550,000.
And what would they be worth today?
Oh, I reckon 1.5 comfortably.
Right. Okay. So there's $1 million. If you'd held those properties, there's $1 million each in those properties. Yeah. And this is often, people like the idea of trading or flipping property. And it's not that you can't have that as a strategy. Sometimes you have to, right? You have to, it's part of an agreement, or the banks will only give you funding if you on-sell a certain portion of them, or whatever it might be. But holding for the long term has some fantastic gains.
That one there's a prime example. That let's say we did hold one of those. Obviously going to be paid off by this stage. So you got 1.5 in equity, and you're probably going to be getting about $1,100 a week income. That's from each one. So. Yeah, and then on top of that, obviously the depreciation that you've claimed throughout time as well. Yeah,
throughout the journey.
That's good going.
So, how long ago was that?
20 years?
I was going to say 20 years.
Yeah. So that's the sort of lesson that I'm sort of passing on to my clients is, if I had have done this, well, I'm giving you the opportunity to learn from my, I wouldn't say mistakes, but learn from my lessons.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, you did really well out of it. And what did you do with that profit you created? What happened with that?
Pretty much from there, we bought and renovated and lived in, sold, no principal place of residence. That was a principal place of residence, no capital gains taxes on those.
Yeah.
So we sort of hopped eight off the top of my
8
head.
times. Oh my gosh.
Needless to say, we've had enough of living in renovations.
Oh, my parents love them to death, but I think I've only done one serious renovation in my entire time, which was this house that we live in now. And both you and I know the builder that did this.
Oh, yeah.
And they did a fabulous job. But my dad basically taught himself building. He's the most amazing building, but it was all self-taught. And he's a graphic designer by trade and worked in advertising. Then he'd build in his spare time. And this is before YouTube had the tutorials and stuff.
Yeah.
Like I'm amazed that he was so handy. And mum as well. She used to put up jib board and or plasterboard, I think you call it over here.
So,
And but we were always living in renovations. Always. I remember through the middle of winter, we lived on this high hill in Wellington in New Zealand, and the back of the house had these massive windows that must have been 8 foot by God knows what. Once they'd done the renovation,
yeah.
But we looked out right across Wellington, right across the harbour, south into the southerly gales. Like Wellington is known as windy Wellington. We got the full force of the southerly straight through our house, and we had no windows up at all. We had tarps right through winter with the southerly wind. I've never been so cold in my life. And after that, I was like, when I leave home, I'm never going to do a renovation. We were always renovating, but that's how they made their money too. And they did really well out of it, is just this constant sort of renovation cycle. But yeah,
you've got the skill set to do it. I think improving your principal place of residence is a smart move.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, as part of a strategy. And if you don't mind moving like you did, how did the kids deal with the moving?
I think because they did it from an early age, that's just what you do. Our last place in Melbourne, we stayed in for about, I think it was about 6 years.
Oh yeah.
And we all got a bit itchy feet. Yeah. We like it, but what are we doing next, Dad? So it's just part and parcel now. Now my eldest daughter Molly, she just moves all the time. She's in Melbourne now, and she lived up at Byron Bay, and she'll live overseas in the next 12 months, no doubt. So I think it's sort of bred into them.
Yeah, interesting. And what do your friends and family think about your investing? Do they know? Do you tell them? Is it something you're comfortable talking about with them?
One or two friends I talk to about it only. And yeah, my mother was in real estate, so she's always interested to listen to where I'm at and what I'm doing. Yeah.
How was she in real estate? What did she do?
She was a real estate agent in Leongatha, and then they moved to Melbourne, and I'll leave out the person that she worked with. They were a bit dodgy, as it turned out. A lot of people invested with these people, and Mum was one of those, and she lost a bit of money, I think, through that. But
that's rough.
Yeah, it was. He was a good salesman, this guy, and I think she bought it. But she did well for herself after that. Though she picked herself up and bought a couple of properties, and we did a development. Her and I did one together in Mornington. Yeah, we did a 6 townhouse development in Mornington. That went well.
Good. Did you keep any of those?
Kept one. Yeah.
Good. Important.
Yes.
And so what would you say to somebody watching this that is really keen to start investing, but maybe is nervous about it, concerned about it? What would you say? What would your advice to be to somebody starting out brand new?
I think what I have been, particularly early days, was we talked about gambling versus investing, and I was probably more the gambler in that. Yeah, I thought I knew what I was talking about, and it stacked up on the back of a napkin, and my feasibility study that I did stacked up. But I really didn't do the full due diligence that I think is required to be successful.
Yeah.
And I think if I was better educated, I would have done better than what I did.
Yeah.
So look, I'm telling my kids at the moment, listen to all this stuff I'm giving you, read all this stuff here. So when the time does come that you have got the ability to purchase a first investment property, you actually understand what you're doing.
Yeah.
So when Mr. Solicitor or Mr. Accountant or Mr. Broker says this and this and this, you understand it.
Yeah.
On top of, if I was to say, here's the research and the evidence why this is a good property, you actually understand that as well.
Yeah.
It's the same as anything in life. It's education and knowledge is key.
Yeah. Yep. And so if you could go back in time, classic podcast question, go back in time and see young Adam at 20, how old were you when the Crossroads hit?
22.
That is young.
Yes, very young.
So you could go back and have a chat with young Adam at 22 years old. What would you say to him with the with the experience of hindsight?
I think probably educate myself, like do more research on what you're trying to do. And I was a builder and a developer, and I felt I was a good builder, educated builder, but when it came to the investment side of things, I was guessing. And I was speculating pretty much. Yep, most did well, absolutely. But it's probably because I was a good builder that they did well. And then that's probably the first thing. And I suppose what would happen from there is that I would have understood the implications of holding a property. Because I never held it early on. I was bought, sold all the time. And I suppose that was my business. That's fine. But I'll guarantee there are opportunities that I could have held. That I look back and go, I should have held. So, I could say that a lot of things, but they all come back to, if I was educated, I would know they were the right things to do.
Okay, good. All righty. And I mean, look, I think, hindsight's a wonderful thing,
Absolutely.
And we'd all, sometimes people say, oh, I'd love to go back to when I was such and such an age. And I go, God, really? I remember myself at that age. And go, not on your life would I go back to that age. But if you could go back with all the lessons that you've learned and your current mindset, and there's a wonderful thing about aging, I think, is that I know it's a cliche, but you do find certainty within yourself as to who you are, and I don't think you have that when you're young. And that uncertainty when you're not sure when you're younger, at least this was my experience, is not something I'd ever want to go back to. But I think this thing around the education certainly helps you build some of that self-esteem and certainty. Some stuff you can only learn, I think, by hard knocks. I'm a big believer that a little bit of adversity can work wonders when it comes to popping out the other side and learning some stuff. I think I'm sure there's plenty of rhetoric and plenty of studies that people that have only ever succeeded or had the perception of an easy ride,
Yeah.
seldom appreciate it or
Yeah.
have self-esteem. Yeah.
I think our biggest lesson that I look back now and see people around that I've learnt, that I've met over the journey, is
Yeah.
that having nothing, like I was still an apprentice when we had Molly, so I was on like $380 a week or something.
Ouch. Yep.
Yeah, and that was tough. But because we literally had to save every single dollar, and our savings, I still remember our actual savings account, we're putting $2 in a week. That's all we could afford to save. But we knew we had to save. But it created really good habits for us.
That's awesome.
When the income increased, the savings increased. And you have to sacrifice. If you're not willing to sacrifice, you're going to pay for it down the track.
Very, very wise words. And yeah, I've got a story. I remember when I first met Vin, my hubby, we were both coming off the back of some sort of life, when you're young. I was 23 and he was 22, and we'd both come off the back of what felt like some life-changing challenges. I got married young and had a baby young, and left my husband, and I just happened to meet Vin, and it all felt like wrong timing, and a bit like your crossroads, right?
Yep.
And I was broke as I had dropped out of uni before I got married. We'd bought a house really poorly. We'd done no research, my first husband and myself, done no research, got sucked into some sales spiel about putting $5,000 down. That was all we could rustle together for a deposit. And then what they were doing was they were overvaluing. They had the valuers in their pocket, and they'd overvalue it so you could get a loan on the, on the equity, so to speak.
Yes.
And I actually got called by the fraud squad when I was here in Australia, because not that we'd done anything wrong, we'd just put the deposit down and bought this house for less than it was worth. But, a really important lesson, but they were tracking down the guy that owned the company that had been doing this, because apparently he left a trail of disaster behind him, and had, been paying valuers backhands and all sorts. This is in the unregulated days.
Yeah.
I was able to sell that house for what we bought it for, thank goodness. So, but I thought I was going to have my first real challenge with, owing a whole lot of money on something I no longer owned when my husband and I separated. So we were going through that, and I remember I'd go around and see Vin, because I was living on my own with my daughter, of course, and Vin at that stage was just a boyfriend, so we were keeping things separate. And I remember on the weekend that my husband had my daughter, I'd catch up with Vin, and we were so broke. I remember searching around the flat, the apartment that he rented as a student, looking for the 5-cent pieces so we could buy a minimum chips because we were hungry. And I remember Vin with $2 instant noodles, and he poured them down the sink by accident, and it was his last $2. And when you're just that broke uni student, it's that I have very, very clear memories of that's what it feels like. Like I had the safety net of my parents and all of that, so I was never going to be homeless or have real challenges. But I had pride and I didn't want to talk to my parents, but that feeling of struggling is something that I think is defining when you're determined to get out the other side. And I remember Vin and we set up this bank account, and I can't remember what we called it, but it was something about our freedom account. And like you and your wife, we'd put any extra money that we had into this account, and that's what funded us to come to Australia and start fresh. And we arrived in Australia. I had 2 T-shirts and a pair of jeans and in a backpack, and Vin had the same. We slept on mattresses on the floor. My daughter's never forgiven me. And we started with nothing basically.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's that determination to pop out the other side from a bit of hardship.
And I think that what you said there reverts back to that buying that property. If you had been educated, you wouldn't have bought that.
Well, not in a million years.
Yeah,
That was put me off property for a long time. I didn't buy my next property till I was 27.
Yep.
I was just like, nah.
You probably say that any mistake you've made, you look back and go, if I was educated, I wouldn't have made that.
100%. Well, my friend, I know you've got another meeting coming up. So I think on that note, we'll end it. So education, folks, is the key. And with your education, you also need to take action. So just make sure that whether you're part of Positive Real Estate or you're looking for coaching, guidance, mentoring, education, make sure that you are empowered to take action in a safe, considered, measured way in order to get some fantastic results, and that you've got plenty of support and people to ask questions. Awesome. So big thank you to Adam for sharing your story.
Thank you, Ted. Lovely chatting.
My pleasure. And I'll see you around the traps.
Bye.
Bye. Hey, thanks for listening to Property Investor Tales. Remember to subscribe so you get notified every time a new episode drops. As you can guess, I love hearing people's property investor tales. So if you'd like to share yours, then please get in touch with me via email at propertyinvestortales@positivementor.com.au. We would also love your feedback, and I would appreciate a 5-star review over on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Remember, you can watch all of these podcasts over on YouTube at Positive Mentor or at positivementor.com.au. Until then, take care, happy investing, and bye for now.